Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. I'm going to be discussing with you some of the conclusions from the last AMJA conference concerning modern medical issues, beginning with end-of-life issues and starting with using a hospice for palliative care of terminal illness by Muslim doctors and patients. Palliative care in general is permissible. In fact, it's recommended because palliative care aligns with the principles of mercy and compassion and alleviating suffering from those that are suffering. The purpose of palliative care is to provide comfort and to provide support during advanced illnesses, and the purpose is not to hasten death. It's permissible for Muslim patients to take medications prescribed by the palliative care team to relieve pain and to relieve other symptoms, even if those medicines contain some narcotic and some sedative substances. There is no problem with doing so as long as it's within the bounds of the therapeutic necessity. Spiritual care should also be provided to the Muslim patient, such as encouraging prayer, encouraging the remembrance of Allah, reciting and listening to the Quran, facing the Qibla. Muslims should strive to provide necessary knowledge concerning this to the palliative care team that's involved in caring of the Muslim patient. Additionally, communication between the hospice facility and Islamic center should be enhanced. Regarding suicide and euthanasia, both of these are prohibited in Islam. Suicide and euthanasia are prohibited in Islam. It's not permissible for patients to engage in any action with the intention of ending life, nor is it permissible for doctors to assist in such practice. Moving on to the withdrawal of life support, and this is an issue and a topic that comes up frequently. The withdrawal of life support and the withdrawal of nutrition from patients that are suffering from incurable diseases with no hope of recovery. When there's no hope of recovery. Now, the default ruling regarding seeking medical treatment is that it's recommended or permissible, according to the majority of scholars, including the scholars of the four madhahib. Some have said that it's obligatory to seek medical treatment, and contemporary scholars have applied this to cases where the illness is harmful, when the medicine is deemed to be very safe and recovery is hoped for, then it may become obligatory to seek medical treatment. Furthermore, it's permissible, with the consent of the patient or their guardians, to withdraw life-sustaining treatments if the doctor sees that the therapeutic procedure are futile. They're futile in achieving recovery or maintaining a dignified life, and that they only serve to prolong the suffering of the patients and their families. In that case, it's permissible, with the consent of the patient or the guardian, to withdraw life-sustaining treatment. The patient or their guardians are allowed to choose not to resuscitate the heart and lungs in case of terminal illnesses with no hope of recovery. They might choose to give permission for this and to delegate the doctor to choose what's best for the patient in light of weighing the harms and the benefits of doing so. So the patient and the guardians can make the decision. They can choose not to resuscitate when the need or the situation arises, or they can choose to allocate that decision to the doctor. Artificial nutrition and hydration are forms of treatment, and their ruling should not be considered in isolation from the patient's overall condition. So the Islamic legal ruling on treatment apply to them as well. This includes the permissibility of refraining from them when they are deemed futile. So the artificial nutrition and hydration, they fall under the same ruling as choosing or to resuscitate or not to resuscitate. If the patient's condition reaches a stage where recovery of life is despaired, then there's no harm in removing life support devices or in keeping them. Either one is allowed. The decision in this regard should be left to the patient's heirs in consultation with the medical team. If the patient hasn't left any instruction in this matter, then it's the heirs and the medical team that should make that decision. They should act according to what is most compassionate for the patient. It may be disliked to keep the devices if it's expected to cause pain to the patient or waste money or resources without any benefit. The dislike may increase, and it might even reach the level of prohibition if there's another patient in need of the intensive care unit or in need of the life support devices. Furthermore, in some treatments, such as resuscitation devices and the like, if they've been initiated and then it's decided that they are futile, then there's no prior permission from the patient to stop them, or their agent or guardian refuses to issue permission, then it's necessary to resort to dispute resolution mechanisms, such as referring to a neutral third party, like the hospital's ethics committee or the judiciary. If the parent's guardian insists on continuing the treatment while bearing the financial consequences, then the doctor has the option to continue the treatment or to refrain from it if another doctor is available to undertake it. Now, moving on to healthcare proxy, advance directives and living will. The practice of advance directives and the living will or a medical power of attorney, which are common in the West, are in harmony with Islamic law, and their use is permissible and it's legitimate. The patient has the right to appoint someone to act on their behalf in medical consent matters. In the event of the patient's incapacity and the absence of the proxy, then guardianship transfers to the blood relative, who are the heirs, both men and women, according to the view of the majority. If the secular laws grant guardianship to those other than legal guardians, then the legal guardian can request a proxy from the legal heirs or enforce their consultation. If the patient's condition and the nature of their illness are unknown, it's obligatory to initiate resuscitation to avert danger from them and as a precaution to preserve life. This is a communal obligation, or a fard kifaya, and it becomes a specific duty for the doctor and the medical team who bear the legal responsibility. Regarding the topic of alternative and complementary medicine, complementary treatments such as yoga or energy healing and the likes, these treatments have two dimensions. There's a spiritual and there's a physical dimension. If it's possible to extract the physical aspect alone and to separate it from the pagan backgrounds, and if its independent benefit in treating some physical ailments is proven, then there's no harm in using them. This is a common matter among many medical practices that our scholars have accepted, provided that the treatment does not retain any pagan influences, and the patient doesn't hold beliefs contrary to correct faith. In such cases, it would be considered permissible as a customary practice. However, any meditations or spiritual immersions with pagan origins are not permissible, as they revolve between polytheism, shirk, and innovation, bid'ah. So Sharia remembrances such as dhikr and general physical exercise could be more than sufficient. And lastly, the topic of rulings on acts of worship pertaining to the ill. acts of worship pertaining to the ill. Firstly, the default rule is that the sick person is obligated to perform purification and prayer just as the healthy person is, except for what they're incapable of doing, in which case they should move to the alternative. The default is the obligation of purification with water from both minor and major impurities. If one is unable to purify oneself with water, then they should move to its alternative, which is tayammum, or dry ablution. If one is unable to perform tayammum by themselves, then someone else may perform wudu, or ablution, or tayammum for them and help them in doing so, and this would suffice. Women are counterparts of men, meaning that they're equal to them in rulings. Whatever is legislated for men in terms of purification is also legislated for women in both the chapters of the default acts of purification and its alternative. Tayammum is sanctioned on anything pure that has dust, even if it's not on the ground, such as when dust settles on the wall or the like. It can also be used for tayammum. It's also legislated on anything that is of the same kind of earth or produced from it, even if it does not have dust. If a sick person is unable to wash the limb due to a valid reason, it is legislated for them to wipe over it instead of washing it with water. If wiping over a cast or bandage is not possible, then they should wash the healthy part of the limb for ablution and perform tayammum on the rest of the limb after completing the ablution. Regarding wiping over casts and bandages, casts are placed on fractures while bandages are applied to wounds. The conditions for the legitimacy of wiping over them include harm from washing that is caused due to necessity. Harm can occur by increasing the impact of something or in delaying its healing, even if that doesn't cause an increase of the illness or effect. So in that case, it's permissible to wipe over the cast or the bandage. Regarding wiping over casts and bandages, casts are placed on fractures, while a bandage is something that's applied to a wound. The condition for the legitimacy of wiping over both of them include harm from washing and that it's due to necessity. Harm occurs by incurring the impact of something or in delaying its healing, even if it does not cause an increase to the illness or the effect. So anytime there's a possible harm, then it becomes permissible to wipe over the cast or the bandage. The difference between wiping over headbands and splints and wiping over leather socks. Wiping over bandages and splints is legislated in both minor and major purification. It's not required to have put them on in a state of purity in case of inability or forgetfulness, and it's not required for them to be on the feet. The duration for wiping over them is not limited except by recovery. Thus, they differ from leather socks in all these aspects. Wiping over leather socks is only legislated in minor purification. It's limited to 3 days and with their nights for the traveler and 1 day and night for the resident, and it's confined to the feet. And it's required to have worn them in the state of purity. None of those conditions apply to wiping over headbands or splints. Regarding wiping over prosthetic limbs and disability devices, prosthetic limbs and artificial substances for amputated body parts do not need to be washed or wiped if they completely cover the place of the amputated limb. If a part of the limb remains, it's obligatory to wash that part, unless it's difficult to remove these substances, in which case they can take the ruling of a splint and therefore be wiped over. The discharge of blood and pus and its effect on purity. The discharge of blood, of a small amount of blood, doesn't nullify the ablution. But if it's excessive, it's safer for the sick person to renew the ablution and to avoid the difference of opinion there. A small amount of blood on the body or clothing is excused, but large amounts should be cleaned to the best extent possible. The discharge of pus from the body is excused and it doesn't nullify the ablution. Dentures and their effect on purity. Dentures are permissible when there's a need for them. And dentures do not affect the validity of wudu or ghusl, nor is it necessary to remove them for their validity. Regarding artificial insemination and its effects on purity, the implantation of semen into a woman's private part without intercourse does not necessitate ghusl unless she experiences orgasm. Kidney dialysis and its effect on purity. This involves the extraction of blood, its purification, and then its return, and none of that nullifies the ablution. Peritoneal dialysis is a matter that requires further consideration, although the prevailing opinion is that it also does not nullify ablution. Carrying impurities in medical bags and its effect on the validity of prayer. The patient who, due to medical treatment, is required to use medical bags to contain discharge from the front or rear private parts must remove them before prayer, undo them, and cleanse the outlet if able to. The obligation to do so is lifted in cases of inability or hardship. So they should remove the bag and cleanse the area as long as they're able to do so. Removing impurity with liquid other than water. The removal of impurity after relieving oneself is done by istinja with water or by istijmar with a dry, pure substance such as toilet paper. If istinja with water is difficult, then it can be done with pure liquids that remove filth. The default rule for purifying impurities from clothing or the body is to use pure water. However, there's no harm in removing them with any pure liquid that can achieve the same, such as vinegar, rose water, and the like, as long as it's pure in itself and removes the essence of impurity. It's preferable to use water to avoid any difference of opinion. Lastly, one should not remove impurities with something edible or to wash the hands with it unless there is a need to do so, meaning that there is nothing else available, or it's a stronger or faster in effect for removal than other substances. هذا والله أعلم.